the Association of Dental Research inducted Professor Fletcher into the 2021 class of fellows to recognize leaders who have achieved research excellence. Professor Fletcher's research program has attracted more than $14 million in research funding, resulting in 115 presentations and 167 publications, including papers 83, abstract 77, and book chapters. Dr. Fletcher has a strong record in training graduate students and postdoctoral fellows in mentoring junior faculty. As a scientist and educator from an underrepresented population, he has leveraged his experience to continue the development of highly motivated people. One of his goals and guiding principles is to continue working towards promoting diversity within the scientific arena by actively recruiting and training students from underrepresented and disadvantaged population, and by serving as a role model, mentor, and advisor to these individuals. He has been involved and will continue aggressively engaging in faculty development and capacity building at our historically Black colleges and universities and academic institutions throughout the Caribbean, Latin America, India, South Korea, and Africa. Professor Fletcher's career is supported by his wife and partner of 34 years. Professor Fletcher's wife, Pauline, is a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, and she holds a Master of Public Health degree. She is a clinical dietitian for the Lumaninda University Children's Hospital. They have 2 adult children, Chantel Fletcher Blake and Coran Fletcher, who are both physicians in California. Join me to welcome Professor Fletcher this afternoon as we begin the webinar. Professor Fletcher, sir, good morning to you. We are happy to have you here. You have the floor now, sir. Please.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and it's a real pleasure to be with this group again. I consider this group my family, so it's just a pleasure to be here. And we'll spend a few minutes talking about how to present yourself in a winning application. And we'll spend a little time going through the biosketch. But as a roadmap, I'll also touch on some other aspects of writing a winning grant proposal. And then we'll spend a little more time on that particular aspect of it in selling yourself. So let me just share my screen. Let me share my screen as we start. Are we able to see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk about how to present yourself in a winning proposal, and that's certainly not trivial, because if you want to get funding and win a grant, you have to be able to sell yourself, and there are several things about yourself that you have to share in order to be successful. One of the things that we need to remember, and I like this quote, is that every champion was once a contender who refused to give up. And getting a grant and pushing your career and building a research program requires a lot of perseverance, thought, and you can be thin-skinned because when you're being critiqued, you have to take that critique constructively and revise your application to bring it to a place where your sponsors will be very happy to support your work. And I like this other quote which says, if plan A fails, remember there are 25 more letters, which, and then, there's an infinite number of combinations of those letters, which indicate, as I've said earlier, that persistence is going to be the key to success. So why do we write grants? Why do we write grants? It gives you time to update yourself on the literature because you have to be able to demonstrate that. You have to be an expert in the field. And it also forces you to examine what's most important about your research and why anyone should be able to give you funds. Why would they care to give you funds to pursue that interest? And it also forces you to communicate in a very logical and succinct manner. It fosters collaborations because in the past, you could have your research and you're the only one. But nowadays, no man is an island. And so there's a lot of team-based research. There's a lot of collaborations that need to be established in order for you to be successful in your research. And it also establishes your credibility. So by writing a grant, certainly it establishes your credibility because it goes through the peer review process and you become known in a particular area with a unique skill set that can advance that field. Writing a winning proposal certainly connects ideas with sponsor values. And I have this figure, which I'll just spend a few minutes going through because it's critically important. So when it comes to persuasion, it's at the intersection of at least 4 important areas. Of course, you have the sponsor values, and the sponsors certainly they're passionate about a particular area. They're concerned about specific problems, injustices, or inequities, or they want to be able to do something to solve those problems. And you need to be able to be realigned, or you need to be aligned with sponsor values and have some credibility, which you can enhance your credibility by establishing your uniqueness. And uniqueness is strength when it relates to your exceptional ability to conduct the proposed project. So you're well-trained, you understand what the sponsor values are and what they're focused on, and you have the training to give you the credibility, and that training certainly will help if it's documented, and in academia that's documented through peer review publications. Also your training, which will show your credibility. There is also the proposal logic, and when you examine the sponsor value, there is the proposal, how it's constructed, and we're going to touch a little bit on this construction, where it focuses on the gap of knowledge or the problem, and how you're going to solve that problem when you lay out an objective, you lay out your aims, you lay out what your expected outcomes, and how those outcomes will solve that problem or benefit that area that the sponsor certainly has a lot of interest in. And then there is some other soft skills we call proposal psychologics. And this psychologic, this responds to the emotional needs of the sponsor. So your sponsor is passionate about a particular area, and you're going to make sure that you can respond to that passion in a psychological manner where successful proposals go beyond addressing the minimum performance standards outlined in the application. And they also display intangible elements like trust, energy, passion, ownership, and commitment. And so you have to be able to address these needs because you have to be able to share with the sponsor that, yes, you're committed to that area, you have the passion, you're highly motivated, and you will take ownership of this particular issue. Once that is displayed, these areas will then lead to persuasion, where you can become a successful scientists pulling in those extramural funds. So what are some of the basic elements to consider? And you have to have a good idea, which certainly will align to the sponsor. What are some of the basic elements to be considered in evaluation of the best ideas? And I have several here. I won't go through all of them in the context of our time allowed, but this PowerPoint presentation certainly will be available for those who would like to access it. So one of the basic element that is needed, you need to ask if in evaluating your ideas, is it significant? Is this work significant? Am I qualified to execute this project? Is there any evidence that you can actually do what is being proposed? Those are some important questions. Is the plan for the proposed work logical and well laid out? Those are some important questions. And is the environment where you are going to be executing the project, do you have the available resources for completing the project as outlined? And how exactly will you recognize success of this project? And you have to have a very reasonable budget. Sometimes you can be a little bit too aggressive where the budget is just unreasonable, but you have to be able to manage that budget where it's reasonable and within the context of your funding sponsor. And then, of course, you have to be able to present novel and unique ideas to solve the problem. You cannot repeat what others are doing. You have to come up with some unique strategies to be able to push the field forward and also make sure it's innovative and certainly unique. Those are some elements that you certainly have to consider. And how do you develop these ideas? First, you have to define what the problem is, what needs to be addressed. Then you collect background information or preliminary data. You assess those the idea's potential for success, and you can modify it if necessary. And then you have to have some kind of interaction with some of your colleagues where you can critically assess your ideas with people who have some knowledge, or sometimes they may have a different point of view. You can ask them to look at your ideas, you discuss those ideas, and sometimes you'll discover things that you really didn't think about, or new aspects of it that you need to pay attention to. That's going to be very helpful in developing these compelling ideas. Then, of course, you have to look to see who you're going to compete with. You have to assess your competition. And if you're, and that's critical, because you cannot, if somebody's funded to do something, they will not fund somebody else to use the same method to do the same thing. So it has to be somehow different. It has to be innovative, and to be able to win that funding or that grant. And of course, once you go through these steps, you refine your idea for a maximum impact. I have this slide in just to remind me that when you're putting these things together, you have to also think about who's going to read it, who's going to assess this application. And you start thinking about the reviewers, because that's most of these applications are peer reviewed. And so you have to think of the audience that's going to be going through these proposals. And what is it about these reviewers? Who are these reviewers? I remember when I started off my career, I was being told about these reviewers, and it was like a black box that you didn't understand. And people would tell you all kinds of things about these reviewers, but there are a few things that will stand out, because these reviewers, they're motivated by participating in the intellectual community. So they're trying to give back to their community of scholars. So that drives them. They also want to understand more in the field. They also want to understand what's the state of the art in the field. Um, and they also want to network with their peers. These are parts of these are things that will motivate a reviewer, and it's also just a prestige to be able to serve on a review panel. So these are things that motivates them, and if you understand that, then you certainly will know how to target or how to write and present your not only yourself but your application. Uh, um, and you also have to consider what's the expertise of these reviewers. And when you sometimes put in your application, you can guide the agency to pick the right person. I remember I was told that when you're writing your application, write it so your 10-year-old child maybe can understand it, because sometimes these reviewers, they don't like it to be too dense. They don't want to be able to have to look up too many things. So you have to clearly communicate or clearly articulate your ideas on what you want to do. And of course, why would they want to read it? You have to make sure that proposal is interesting. And then an important question, will they be fair and impartial? So these are some of the components that will drive these reviewers, and understanding that will then help you to draft that application. So there are some there are some major critical elements in making a decision to go forward with a particular grant. And the first one is my project significant? Is it addressing something of significance? Which you have to read the announcement from your sponsor to be able to align that grant with what they're interested in. Is it novel and innovative? Will you be able to bring a team with you? The approach and plan of work, that's going to be important. And also the environment and the institution, because they look to see whether or not you're in a place that has the resources, the support to be able to successfully execute the grant. So these are some critical elements in this decision-making process to move forward. And of course, when it comes to time, that's the most critical ingredient. And we're always at the last minute. Putting together a successful grant takes an enormous amount of time to be able to pull together. It's time consuming, and so you have to identify blocks of time almost every day to be able to work on it, where a grant can take up to 3 to 4 weeks or longer to really put it together. But that's in reality, sometimes we work up to the last minute. So there are several components of a grant proposal. They're listed here. You have a cover letter, title, abstract, and this biological sketch, which we'll spend a little more time on. We have the budget, and then we have a summary, which most people on the review panel and your agency will read this. So this is very crucial in how you put this together. Then you have your significance, innovation, your plan of work, and of course, you have to provide some information about your organization, because this is part of the review process. So just quickly, I'll touch on some of these components. Where in your executive summary, you have an introductory paragraph where you have to have an opening sentence. You have your current knowledge and the gap of knowledge that you're focused on. And then you have a second paragraph or a second section where you talk about what's going to be done. And then you outline your specific aims and goals and objectives. And then, of course, you have a payoff section where you talk about the innovation, the expected outcomes, and how this will impact the field, how this new knowledge will help to solve that problem. And of course, you have your significance, where you have three parts. The gap, you have to acknowledge the gap of knowledge. You have a statement why the proposal is significant, and you can validate this by looking at the benefits that will come from this new knowledge, that will also align with the funding agency, and how this can benefit others. This section on innovation is also very critical because it will indicate directly to your sponsors why this particular proposal should stand out from others. And when it comes to innovation, it can be conceptual innovation, a new paradigm that can be presented. It could be new technology, or it could be standard technology that we commonly use with a new application in another area. So that's also very innovative when you can take standard technology to a new area to solve that particular problem. Then, of course, the approach, which is going to be the most difficult section and the one of the significant sections, where you lay out your plan studies, your how you're going to execute those studies, what you're expecting to accomplish. So the outcomes that you're expecting from your experimental plan, and also what are some of the anticipated problems, and if those things occur, what other strategies you would need to overcome that. And this is quite critical, because if you write a grant and you don't have any anticipated problems or any alternate strategies in there, that's a red flag, because it's going to tell your reviewers that this person is not really versed in this area, doesn't understand some of the nuances and some of the problems that might arise. But once you lay those out, and you can foresee everything, but you can lay out some of the possible ones and a way to also get around that. And of course, the timetable for the project, where you have a block of time that will be spent with each particular approach, and how you will complete the entire project. And of course, you can summarize those net accomplishments and plans for the next step. So a lot of the times these agencies are interested in, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the data? And how am I going to follow this up? Will I be able to complete that in this particular period? And what are the next steps? And that's very important, because it tells them that you are committed. You have a buy-in to this passion, this project, which you're going to not only see to completion for what you're proposing, but you're going to follow this thing long term. Then, of course, we have the biological sketch, which we'll spend the rest of the time talking about. We have the budget here, which has to be reasonable, and it's usually well justified and within the limits of what the agency can support. So if they can support, let's say, $1 million, you should not ask for $3 million, because then that's going to be a problem. They wouldn't be able to fund it, or they may ask you to cut it. So you have to be reasonable. But the bio sketch, the biological sketch, which I'm going to be talking a little bit about the NIH format. That's kind of the gold standard, because if you're interested in anything in this country and in mostly other places, they follow this format. There might be some variations, but they follow a format where you have to sell yourself. So the reviewers must be convinced that you have the appropriate credentials to undertake this proposal successfully, and you have the necessary experience to supervise and coordinate the efforts, and you have the experience and the expertise that are relevant to the proposal, and that must be clearly stated. So how do we write a compelling bio sketch? And I've included here a link that will take you to the format for the NIH BioSketch. And like I said before, this can a lot of the agencies kind of follow quite closely, some of them, this format. And what's important here is your BioSketch is used by the funding agency staff to make sure that the person who is applying has the skills, the knowledge, and the resources necessary to carry out the proposed research. It's also very important that in this BioSketch, you tailor it so it's talking about you. This is the first detail that they're going to see about you and your qualifications for the specific grant. So the BioSketch or the BioSketch that you're going to present is not it's not generic. Certainly, it will have some components that you can use on all your grants, but you have to modify it so it's tailored to that specific grant. So if they need a specific expertise, they need some specific experiences, you have to highlight that. And this particular BioSketch, when you compile your grant application, it appears very early in that package where they will see it, they'll get introduced to the grant, and you're actually selling yourself. So you want to use a very positive tone about yourself that these reviewers will buy into. And of course, one of the things that is very important, these BioSketches, they must conform to a specific format. And most agencies, when they give out instructions, they will tell you how they want to see the format, and you need to follow that format. That's very important because it's also telling the agency and the reviewers that this particular person pays attention to details and can follow instructions. So these BioSketches, or the BioSketch, and at least the NIH BioSketch, is really it follows a specific format. They have some guidelines that you must follow, and so they also have the forms that you fill, and you can find this. I have the link that you can find this format, and you can find the fillable form that you can use to put your BioSketch together. So it has one of the instructions, at least for the NIH, it should not exceed 5 pages. It cannot exceed 5 pages. It can be less, but cannot exceed 5 pages. It has your name, and for the NIH, it has to have, you have to be registered in eCommons. It has your position title. Then it has your education background and training. Then it has some other components, and I will go through this. It has your you have to have a personal statement. It has a section where you have your position, scientific appointment, and honors. And then it has your contribution to science. And you can see all of this at this particular website. So also at this website, and this is something that's available, if you want to look at sample grants, especially looking at NIH, you can always go to that institute and you can always Google sample grants for these for this particular institute or even for the NIH, and they will display for you not only the forms, but some of the samples that they have chosen that will help you to fill, to put the form together. Now, this also comes from this site where, and I took this example. I can also share mine with you, but I took this example because this is one of the things that's posted at the NIH site, and it's looking at this particular person, Morgan Casey Hunt, and he registered with eCommons. So this is his username, and it has your title. And then the education where did a bachelor's degree at University of California, Berkeley in psychology. At the University of Vermont, did a PhD, and the time of completion is given there in experimental psychology. And then postdoctoral training at University of California, Berkeley, in public health and epidemiology. So that clearly shows your reviewers that you are you have at least the training and the qualification to execute the project. Then, of course, you have the personal statement. So that's the next thing on the list, your personal statement. And this personal statement has to address several questions. It has to address several questions. And here you have an opportunity of telling a compelling but short story about yourself, and you have to be able to sell yourself very well to these reviewers. And the personal statement is usually limited to less than a page, about a half a page, and it will include 4 products or 4 references. I'll show that to you. And this is where you have a chance to indicate your specific expertise that will address the grant. And this one is a very short one. You can certainly read through it. It will show some of the components. You have to be able to write it in a very compelling manner. Who you are in the context of the grant. What is this grant mechanism about, that you're qualified? If you're an early investigator, clearly you should state that as an early investigator, you're going to be pursuing this grant. And of course, you have to be able to, if you have a team, you can also include that as part of the statement. And you can, you have to use an active language. You have to be precise, and don't use any jargon in this section. You have to be able to be precise in the language. Don't use any abbreviations that's not known or they have to look up. You want to make it easy and very pleasant for them to be able to read that. So in this case, this person starts out with, I am an associate professor of psychology, and my research is focused on neuropsychological changes associated with substance use disorders. I have a background in psychology with specific training. You can talk about your program as PI or co-investigators on several NIH grants, what they have done, how they have contributed to the field, and then you can put a summary. In summary, I have the expertise, leadership, training, expertise and motivation necessary to successfully carry out the proposed research project. So that's included. And then you also include other projects that you would like to highlight. And in this case, they put these grants that they have been involved with and their role, which is highlighted. And then at least 4 citations where they can go to the literature and they can corroborate what you're saying that's documented in the literature. Also, what's provided is an ID for these, if it's available, an ID for these citations, because sometimes these reviewers want to go look it up. They can just use this ID and it will take them directly to your publication, and use the PMCID for this. There's also another ID which just take you to the abstract. You don't want to use that. You want to use this one that will take you, certainly take you to the publication. So that's the personal statement. Then you have your positions and scientific appointments and honors that you can put. So and it goes from the latest. So it goes in reverse chronological order from the latest the earliest, where you start with 21 and you go like here to 2006. So you put all your positions and scientific appointments here, and then you can list your honors that follows that. Then you have to describe your contribution to science. And here reviewers will consider your seniority when they evaluate the scientific contribution. And NIH offers the following advice for new scientists, because when you're starting off, you certainly won't have an exhaustive list. If you have one publication, you can summarize the key findings of the paper and its importance in a short contribution. If you have no publication yet, you can also provide a contribution that describes your effort on other people's papers or projects. For example, perhaps you use a certain method provided. You use a certain method, provide the literature reviewer for a paper, or you're involved with other areas of research. You cared for all the research animals. Those are some of the things that you can put in. And if you still don't have that, you might have thesis experience. You can still describe your contribution that occurs throughout that training period. And here it says, note that you do not have to be an author on a publication you reference. It is up to you how you describe your contribution. As one way to do so, you could choose a list of key publication that builds on your work. So there are lots of variations that one can use to describe your contribution to science. So I think this slide is certainly going to be important in putting that together. So when you look at the contribution to science, you can see where it describes in a succinct manner what has been your contribution. And of course, it will list your manuscripts or the publications that will support what is being said here in the text. And of course, the full citation with the ID number. And this, like I said before, this is going to be critical, because when they go through and they want to look at something, because a lot of the time these reviewers, when they look at your application, sometimes some things will catch their eye, because as a reviewer, certainly you're going to learn new things and you may want to check out a reference, and that's one way to quickly find that reference. Here's another part of it where they list, they will list in a succinct way that particular contribution and the references that will support that. Now, you can't put all, sometimes you're not able to put all of your references in this section. And so it has a complete list of your published work in my bibliography, which you can certainly construct through PubMed. So you go to PubMed and you list all your publication in my bibliography. You use that to develop that. And then you have this, this link that is put as part of this bio sketch, where they will click on it. Once they click on it, it will take them to that site. And I'll just, I will just change the screen now. I'll come back in just a minute. I'm going to change the screen and I'm just going to look, I'm going to pull up one of my bio sketch, and I'll show you some of the same components that I just showed you in the sample, where it starts off with my name, my eCommons username, my title, my educational training, where as a postdoc, and my area of expertise. And of course, you will see my, make it a little bigger. You will see my, I start off as an experienced and well-trained scientist in these areas, how I focus my research. And of course, something I end here after I've gone through some of my contributions and how it might relate. And this particular grant is a part of a training grant. So you'll notice that some of I've put in here parts of what I've been involved with in training other students and postdoctoral fellows and what they have done. And then you summarize, and you could start with this sentence, but you can also summarize with this, where I'm qualified to train and mentor students as outlined in the current T32 application. So they know you're specifically talking about this. In addition, I have the skill, resources, and experience to overcome any potential difficulties or take advantage of unique opportunities. And of course, I have some articles here where I've shown some of my expertise, some of the training that has occurred. And then here is another important section, which you'll also see in the sample, where you talk about some projects that you can highlight. And this one's a little different because in here, some grants that were recently submitted, I have included those so they see what is in the pipeline. This grant for over $3 million, what it addressed. This one for over $2 million, what is it addressing? And this one for almost $1 million, what is it addressing? And some of the other grants that we have in our portfolio and what it will address, because they want to see that you're active in the field. If you don't have all these grants, then that's certainly not going to be there. But if you're active, then that needs to go in that section. Of course, here you see positions and appointments, and also honors. So positions, and it's in chronological order from the latest. Appointments and some honors. And here you have your contribution to science, where you really sell yourself that you are an expert in this particular area and you can contribute to that. And we go through and coming to the end, you have a complete list of your published work, which you can build in my bibliography. So that's see, we certainly follow that format. So getting back to our publication, our presentation, moving on from that bio sketch, and which is critical. Two other more critical parts is your abstract. And this is the single most important part of the grant, because everybody will read it. And you must follow the instructions, because someone will give you 300 words or 350 words to describe what you're trying to do. And you must communicate all the important and critical aspects of the grant with highly infectious enthusiasm. When they read it, they have to be just as excited as you are. And this is one of the key means for early advocacy with reviewers, because everybody, that's the first thing they will read. They will read that, then they will certainly read your bio sketch before they go into your research strategy. Another more important thing is the title. And this is the shortest sentence with the heaviest weight. And first impression counts, where you have to put kind of the summary of the grant in those few sentences, where once they see it, they will see the relevance. They will be interested in reading it. And you have to arrange these word combinations, certainly, to give us your highest impact. And we can talk about this again for any follow-up to this webinar. But putting together the title is one of the hardest things. But if you do it right, it certainly is very important to your success. So excellent proposals will get funded. Good proposals demonstrate that you can comply with the request, but you have to have an excellent proposal that stands out from the competition. So you go beyond complying with the requirements and you satisfy the needs of the sponsor. So our winning proposal must connect your project ideas with the values of the sponsor. And selling yourself using the bio sketch is one of the most critical elements in this whole process for success. And we have given you some outlines. I can also share my bio sketch with the group, so you'll have another one, and you can find several on the on the web to see the different types that different formats, but they all will address using the same strategy and has the same pattern of presentation. So with that, don't be pushed by your problems, but be led by your dreams. Never give up. I have some references here. And of course, you can always reach out to me for any problems or any help, and I'd be readily available to be able to do that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your time. Thank you so much. This webinar is another eye-opener to some of the challenges that we are having here, especially when we write. It's my earnest prayer that the Lord will grant us more wisdom as we continue to write. So in winning proposal, I have learned that we need to examine the sponsor's values, their emotional needs. And when you said that, I was thinking in my head that how, as a grant writer, how do I identify emotional need of funding agency and all? But I have grabbed all the things that I needed to do as a grant writer and a researcher in order to identify all those needs. Without identifying the emotional needs of the sponsors, there's no how we'll be able to sell ourselves properly to them. Thank you very much, sir. Do we have questions? Any contribution or questions from the house?
There is a hand already. Onuwa Ebenezer David.
Hello, Mr. Ebenezer, can you hear me? Please go ahead. We can send message or speak up. We have, okay, Mr. Ebenezer.
Sorry, they are already putting their needs in the chat, so you have to put your eye on the chat as well.
Okay.
So there's a question: how can the institution provide researchers with e-common names? And yes, your institution, your research office will certainly help you to do that. I know Dr. Teo's office is involved and they can help you to sign up with e-commons. If you're going to apply for any NIH grants or anyone to collaborate with NIH, you have to get that e-commons. You have to register in e-commons, which is fairly straightforward. And your research office can certainly help you with that. And here's the question: is this presentation applicable? Is this presentation applicable only to research in science? How can non-science background apply these tips in writing grants? They're very generic. The principles remain the same for any research area. You have to follow what I presented here are broad principles that can be applied to any area of research. The biosketch, the format might be a little different, but the same principles apply where you have to sell yourself. You have to give a statement that's going to outline your education and training and how your expertise is going to be relevant to the project. And if you bring a team, how have you brought this team together? How the expertise complement each other? Because you might not be strong in an area, but you can recruit someone in that area to be part of the team. And that's a critical part of any grant. It's now what we're seeing nowadays. We see a lot of team-based research because you might not have all the expertise in that particular area, but there are others who will have that expertise. You bring them onto the grant, whether it's a co-PI or a co-investigator or a collaborator, and that you have to document. If it's a co-PI, then you have to include their qualifications as part of the grant. If it's a collaborator or a co-investigator, you get a letter stating that they will be part of this team, and that all goes into the grant. Now, that's very important, and sometimes it's easier if you're collaborating with somebody and you want to recruit them onto your grant. It's easier if you draft a letter which they can modify, because you want them to be very enthusiastic about your grant. And some of them will just give a very bland statement, and once it gets into review, they will see that this person is not that highly enthusiastic. So to prevent that, you can guide them along by writing this letter of support, which they can then modify.
Thank you very much, sir. Does that answer your question? Thank you. There's another question here, sir. Okay, how can we get the PowerPoint? He said earlier that he is going to share with us, so we will let you know. Sir, you only mentioned, okay. Okay, we appreciate Dr. Fletcher for this beautiful presentation. My question is on budget. If the proposal is beautifully written and actually captivating, but the funder does not have this fund, I can't see that. Fund, is it possible for the funder to liaise with the other funding agencies to provide such fund?
Normally that does not occur. So if they can't fund it, they will just tell you they can't fund it. It doesn't mean that you can't apply to another agency. So you can take that grant, you can take the critique, and you can look for another agency that might fund that application. Now, if you go into the NIH, there are several institutes, and sometimes they may collaborate with funding. So if one institute doesn't fund it, there's another institute that could fund the same application. And how the NIH is, how it is structured is that they have one institute that will do the review process. And these other institutes then can look at the reviews and they will decide whether or not they can fund it. If you go to a foundation and they don't have the money, they'll tell you, yeah, we like your proposal, but we don't have the money to fund it. You can then take that application and you can send it to a different foundation that might be able to fund it. And that's something that we commonly do. And, you know, in my experience, it happens all the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to add to what Professor Fletcher has said, there was a grant we submitted last year to NIH. You know, they look at the proposal, and when they were going to write us, they said they will encourage BU to send the same proposal to NIHM, that's NIH mental health aspect of it. So we sent the proposal in there, but unfortunately we didn't get it. But the comments from them were really encouraging. So sometimes when you send application like that, if there are other funders they think that might be of help in funding your proposal, they encourage. They might not send to them, but they will encourage you to send yourself to them. We have had that experience here times ago. So is there any other? Okay.
I
Professor
think there is
Fletcher,
one
sir,
other question. Yeah.
there is another question here. Okay, you spoke about how titles should follow the rules and will be judged by everyone. Can you please provide an example of a winning grant title? Maybe something you have particularly used, so we know the actual basics of what it should contain.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Now, there are some rules that will govern the title. So they might tell you can't have a title with more than, let's say, 100 characters in it. So it has to be short. I mean, you're limited with just, so there's a grant that I'm currently working on, which I'm going to submit next week. And I'm working with a group of investigators that when I first started my career, I was working with them. And so we're both pioneers in the area. Now we're joining forces to study this particular enzyme, which is very important in one of the organisms that I'm studying. So I've recruited this person who is a biochemist. I'm a molecular geneticist, and we also have included a structural biologist. And so the title of that grant is Structure Functional Studies of the Structure Functional Studies of the Ginger Pains, which will tell the reviewers that this is, we're going to be looking at the structure and the function and how it impacts the biogenesis, how it's being processed, and also impacts its localization. So all of that is contained in the title. I don't have it up on my computer. I would show you. I'd have to pull it up and show you, but we kind of incorporate the major outcome of this grant, which is novel in this area, captured in the title. So it's structure functional studies on ginger pain biogenesis and localization. And that's the major outcome. So we use a very short title to capture all of this. So that's just one example.
Thank you, sir. Somebody is trying to speak. Please speak up.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prof. I really enjoyed this presentation, and that's what is prompting me to ask this question. And it's with regards to the biosketch. Now, when you gave the sample, there was the part for award, honors, and the likes. But I'm asking this question particularly for early career researchers that probably may not have so much honors and this award, because I understand that sometimes when some of these reviewers look at this thing, there's always this bias with those that are up there. So for early career researcher, what can you advise, especially in a project whereby the collaboration is also among colleagues, early career researcher, and maybe you don't have so much top senior academics in the team, and maybe the reviewer, when they are looking at the proposal and check the biosketch, they see people who have more higher biosketch in terms of quality and experiences and awards, the honors they've won. Whereas some of these early career researchers, they are just a group of people who actually have the competence, but may not probably have won a grant before or have some of these honors and awards. What can you advise in such situations? Because I think this sometimes affect many of these grants that ECR applied for. Please, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, because you have to start somewhere. And if you're just starting your career, and I'm just using myself as an example, I go back and I look at some of the early bio sketches that I put together, and it's like, wow, it was so thin. I mean, it didn't have much on it. But remember, most of these grant applications, if you don't have the expertise, you have to recruit somebody with the expertise. So in any grant application, you might have 3 or 4 bio sketches in there that will show the expertise of the team. Now, you may have a specific area that you are strong in, and that is what you highlight on your bio sketch. You may not have a long list of achievements, but you have something. You may not have, your contribution might not be extensive, but you can include some of your experiences, like you have where you have developed or you have published on a technique that others have used. You include that as part of your contribution. You can talk a little bit about, if you're just coming out of a PhD, you can talk a little bit about your academic training, your research training, and how that has been, that has tried to fill a gap in that particular area, and the expertise that was contributed with that training. So there are several options that you can use. If you notice, the example that I use is from an assistant professor, and it was like 3 pages. Mine is 5 pages, and of course I can put a lot more, but you're limited to 5 pages. So you can put those in, and you make the best of what your expertise that will convince the reviewers and the agency that this person has unique expertise that can make this grant successful.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sir. That's why collaboration is very important when writing grants. It goes a very long way. Thank you very much, sir. Prof. Ma, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
very much, Professor Fletcher. Just to add that BU as an institution is registered with some of these grant platforms. And so participants who are interested can visit RIC office to find out more on that, including the Commons. And then secondly, I was going to ask if it's possible to provide a link to one's Google Scholar profile, for one's publication.
You're asking if I can provide the link to
Google Scholar profile for publications.
Yes, so yes, you can always go to Google Scholar, or there is PubMed. Mostly everybody understands PubMed. Well, of course, in the biomedical sciences, we usually use PubMed, which let me see if I can just share my screen quickly.
Yes, for those that are not in the medical health area.
Yes, you can. There are other types of websites that certainly one can use. Let's look at PubMed. Let me see. So if you're looking at PubMed, and let me pull this one, PubMed. Let me go to some of the later articles. Yeah, here's one. Let me pull this one up. You will see, you can find different articles, and this is one of my article, which it will give you, this is the site that you can, it will give you the site, and it will give you the ID number, and you can pull this down. Certainly, you can also go to Google Scholar. You can find that information also. Let me see. So you go to Google Scholar, and certainly I put my name in, and it can certainly bring up a lot of my papers. And with those papers, once you click on them, it will certainly take you there to PubMed, or this is PubMed Central, which is the different part. And you can see the ID, you can have your ID number and everything else about that. It gives you also the link that that will be important in your citation, because this will certainly identify where the paper is. You have the PMID. This will probably take you to the abstract, but you certainly need this one, which is the PMCID, which will give you access to the full paper. All right, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And there's another question: how can you advise early career research? get involved with grant writing in terms of cross-disciplinary collaborations. That's something very critical, and I think you're through Dr. Teo's office, that's one of the things that they're certainly really focused on. And that's one of the things we're involved with here with Loma Linda, collaborating with Babcock. We're identifying projects, we're linking people together, we're getting the appropriate expertise. And if you have a project and you have a great idea and it's novel and it's unique, and it will fill a gap of knowledge, certainly you can start talking to your colleagues, because you can use different approaches. And if you need to recruit a particular person in an area of expertise that will make that grant even more successful, then you start your discussion, and that's how you start bringing the group together. You bring the group, you start brainstorming, you start developing a strategy, and that will certainly help with developing your collaboration. There's also a seed grant funding program for your university. I would suggest you take full advantage of that, because if you have a unique area and you're bringing together several individuals in that area, you can start generating some preliminary data, which is going to be very important in convincing your reviewers and the agency that, yes, this is important, this area is significant, I can do the work. Here's some preliminary data that is supporting the rationale from our experiments. And here it is well aligned with my hypothesis. And this grant is going to be hypothesis driven, because it is very specific. It's addressing a specific area, and I know what I'm doing. With that, any agency will be highly motivated and will want to support your work.
Thank you very much, Prof. Is there, do we still have more questions? Nobody's raising his hand. Okay. So we can continue. Professor Fletcher, thank you very much. And PU faculty and staff present here today, while I was going through Professor Fletcher's bio sketch, I saw a few things that really encouraged me that it is possible. We can also start getting grants, and whenever we have challenges, we can always call upon him to help us. Here, I saw something. Okay, I have it now. Professor Fletcher's research program has attracted more than $40 million, and I was like, wow, this is a whole lot. How do we get here? What can we do in order to be preparing a good proposal with interesting basket? We have to sell ourselves and all that. So I just said to myself that it is possible, and we can always ask him to be a mentor for those in medical microbiology. I know in 2022, we worked with Professor Fletcher, and I must say that the proposal we developed then together was really a great one, and the team really enjoyed working with him. So we can also start something. Whenever we need him, we call upon him to assist us. Thank you very much, Prof. The Lord continue to be with you in a very special way, sir. Thank you for coming. We really enjoyed the webinar. Dr. Anokuru, sir.
A comment before Dr. Anokuru, a comment.
Okay.
Professor Fletcher is an adjunct lecturer with Babcock University Department of Microbiology. He volunteered to do that for us. So, like I said, he's very much a part of the community. Thank you, Prof.
Well, thank you so much, and it's a real pleasure. And I just want to tell this group, thanks for taking me as part of your family, and I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure we're successful. So
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you once again, Prof. Fletcher. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I want to just stress a few things before we close. One, this webinar was not presented for those in the sciences or those in the medical field. It was presented for every faculty and staff of Babcock University, especially those who are interested or who are planning to apply for the RIC grant. It is a seed grant which is supposed to help us to start our careers for those who are early careers researchers. So those who don't have experiences and so on can leverage on that. And those who already have, it can also help them to get preliminary data they can use to apply for bigger grants. And that is why it is important. The principles presented here are applicable to any field you can think about. Now, one of the challenges we realized was the fact that when we submitted grants, we had a, excuse me, please. All right. Sorry about that. When some faculty applied for grants, we discovered that there were no sufficient evidences to prove that they had expertise in those fields where they were applying. There are no enough documents, evidences for that. And that's what BioSketch provides. It provides that evidence. So whether you're in history, whether you're in mass comm, whether you are in English, it doesn't matter what field you are, you should be able to provide evidence that I have been doing certain things in this area. And that is what the BioSketch is all about. For the RIC grant, we will be requesting your BioSketch. And that will be, in fact, the preliminary elimination for those who don't have BioSketch, they will be disqualified immediately, because without that, how do we want to know that you have an idea? Now, Prof. Fletcher mentioned something which I think is very, very important. For those who have not even published any papers before, or who don't even have any ideas, you must have done a PhD. If you have not done a PhD, you must have done your master's. If you have not done your master's, you must have done your first degree. So in other words, you must have some experiences somehow. And since we're also trying to build teams, not individual researchers, we want to build teams and want to build researchers around a group of individuals. It is also important that when we look at the collective application or contribution of the team, it would also suffice. So go through the call, read through every part of it, and please make sure that you understand clearly so that you can take advantage of the grant. It's going to close February 28th, and after that, the review process will begin, and then the grants will be awarded to the successful one. So I want to thank everyone for coming once again. I want to thank Prof. Fletcher for availing himself this moment. And I pray that the Lord will grant us the grace to move research forward. The video will be available at the right time, and we will tell you exactly how to access the link. So we will be praying now, except there is any other information, Prophet Tayo, before I do the closing prayer. If there's none, okay, then we'll pray. Shall we pray for a close? Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. We are grateful to you for the opportunity to hear Professor Fletcher and to share from his experience. I want to pray that you help us even as we look forward to having this research experience this year. We ask that you help us, Lord, to prepare the RIC grant application in a way that we meet the standard that have been presented, and that we'll be able to experience research in a way that you will be glorified in all. We pray for every researcher here, whether faculty or staff, Lord, that they will be able to come up with something tangible. We want to thank you for the university, and we ask, Lord, I continue to bless the administration for providing the resources, this grant for us to be able to access. Thank you, Lord, for everything, for hearing us, and we pray that you help us as we move forward from here to other programs that we have. May your name be glorified, for I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prof. Fletcher, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prof. Fletcher, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.